If you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man should think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he would do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. These are the words of American-born historian Dr. Carter Woodson in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro. For every black child in the diaspora that is living out of the continent of Africa, there must be a rite of passage where the history of the Negro becomes a test of their blackness. It's important for them to know that their history does not begin with slavery, but long before slavery, and for thousands of years, their ancestors were kings and queens that dominated the world in trade, engineering, agriculture, medicine, philosophy, art, science, and literature. And to those that are at home on the African continent, we must not allow any black child on the African continent to graduate out of our universities if that individual has not yet been taught the history of the African from an Afrocentric perspective. African must be taught their history by other Africans. We must not fall to the ever-present garbage of trying to find out what the cost-benefit analysis would be. This is one project that must not be calculated by a balance sheet, because the African liberation from slavery and colonization, its cost can be worse than the constant oppression that is inflicted daily on the minds of the African. And this is true to those at home and abroad, that is, Africans on the mainland and those in the diaspora. This freedom cannot be postponed for another day. It must be today. I hope you understand that the history of the African is not mere song, dance, and the Bushmen of the Kalahari, that is the Sand people. Africa's history is a whole lot more than that. Africa's history is mathematics. Ancient Kemet, for more than 35,000 years, had texts on math, including multiplication, division, fraction, and formulas on geometry to calculate the volumes of shapes and areas like that of the pyramid. You will find in Riyadh mathematical papyrus that was found at the memorial temple of Pharaoh Ramses II, popularly known as Ramses the Great, that Africans, aside from doing complex geometry, noted the value of pi was 3.16, dated 1650 BC, more than 1,000 years before the Greek mathematician Archimedes got the value of pi to be 3.14. For more than 8,000 years, the people of Congo were using a numeric system they developed. So did the Yorubas of Nigeria with 20-unit base system and not 10. And most scholars agree that this system demands much more abstract reasoning. Medicine is enshrined in Africa's history. Africa for several centuries used most of the medical treatment that are still in use today. Before the Europeans' invasion of Africa, Kemet, South Africa, and Nigeria, among many other regions in Africa, had far more advanced medicine than medicine in Europe. These are some of the medical procedures that were known to Africa long before Europeans started practicing them. Procedures such as broken bone setting, bullet removal, skin grafting, autopsy, filling of dental cavity, installation of false teeth, cesarean section, vaccination, and anesthesia. I'm sure you will think I'm crazy that there were more or many advanced cultures performing surgery with antiseptic. The history also dominated the oceans for thousands of years, crossing the Atlantic for thousands of years before Columbus with exceptional navigational skills. With the ancient Benin city wall covering over 65,000 square kilometers of community land, the city of Great Zimbabwe and the pyramid of Kemet, among many others, are just a few examples of Africa's engineering greatness, with masons and civil engineers that dominated the world for thousands of centuries. The African has been taught that her cultures are inferior, her names are primitive, and the power in her voice undesirable. In the name of religion, you have abandoned your names for those of your colonial slave masters. The Western colonial masters have brainwashed the African to believe that what is white is godly and that which is black is evil. So the West has given to the African a white Jesus and a black Satan. So much that Jesus looks like Prince Charles of Great Britain with blue eyes, and Satan looks like me, black. That means God is white. If Jesus Christ, his son, is white. We are subconsciously made to believe that if we were to go to heaven, we will be in the congregation, somewhere in the back, around the gates, segregated by skin color, because God is white and the African is not. And because black is primitive, savages, and unrighteous in the minds of our colonizers. Meanwhile, Arab Muslims continue to kidnap and sell black Africans as slaves, a tradition dated to the 6th century when Prophet Muhammad himself bought, sold, and captured slaves as well. Africans must therefore breed a new generation of teachers with an Afrocentric perspective, ready to pay any price, anywhere, to resurrect the buried and forgotten history of the African.